quickly before I get into the video, if you want to come and join trainings and events with my Mordhau clan, head into our Discord and you'll see a little tab saying how to join. There will give you instructions how to join one of the 5 infantry divisions or the archer division. You have to be in one of these 5 infantry groups or the archer group in order to join the clan, because it's done, because there's so many of us, we have to have 5 different like mini clans within the clan. So it will be shown there. You'll have to go to the bottom of the Discord, you'll type in what you do to join it, and of course some may be blocked off, so you might only be able to join infantry 3. That's because infantry 3 need more numbers, etc, etc. But that will all be explained on the Discord, so come on the Discord if you want to come and check it out, link in description. It's very strange when I make a top 10 video on things that are my opinion, funnily enough, that other people don't agree with my opinion. But that's fair enough, that's fair enough. But today in the top 10 perks in Mordhau, this is just fact. It's not facts, this is also slightly my opinion, but at the same time, I feel like if you're wanting to use perks in Mordhau for certain situations, these are probably the best ones that you want to use for those situations. And then, yeah, the list goes from very situational perks to, you know, all out pretty decent ones. So without more talking, let's get straight into the video. First off, we have Smith. Now, Smith is a pretty weak perk, hence why it's at number 10. I mean, there are perks like Peasant and things, which joke perks, but Smith is fairly useful, but it's so situational that that's why I'm putting it at number 10. It increases your repair effectiveness 50%, which, yes, is great if you wanted to repair barricades, be an engineer, things like that, but as I said, it's very situational. If you want to play as an engineer within a clan or within a group, this is probably what you're going to be wanting to be looking at. As, you know, in front lines, when you're trying to put up barricades, it often has to be done very, very fast, otherwise the enemy are going to get to you extremely quickly, and you're not going to have barricades up in time. So as I said, Smith is fairly good if that's where you're going for, but it's not very useful for anyone other than the people that want to play as an engineer. And going on to another one that is fairly situational, it's one that I actually use, and this is Fireproof. Now, Fireproof is really cheap, it only costs 1 perk point, and this is why that I use it, because I think for how cheap it is pretty useful, and I've actually found quite a lot of uses for it on the battlefield. It's where fire damage does 80% less damage to you as a player, so running through fire does next to no damage, and I use it pretty much all the time on the battlefield. Yes, I do have quite a heavy weapon, which means that I can't spend as much on perks, so Fireproof being a 1-pointer is fairly useful for me. But if you have lighter armor or things like that, you're not going to really need Fireproof, since it's so situational, will only really be used on front lines or maybe even some skirmishes. But in duels, anything other than those 2 maps, you're not going to really be using Fireproof at all. So maybe it's something you want to look at if you find you get firebombs thrown at you a lot. But other than that, I would say Fireproof is not that important in the whole battle as a general. But now we're starting to get onto some more of the fun ones. Here we have Rush. Now, Rush is pretty useful, but I would say, once again, that it isn't great in terms of all types of situations. It gives you a sprint effect that you must be ready to utilize as soon as you secure that kill. So as soon as you chop someone down, it gives you a really quick sprint, meaning that if you're in a battle with a lot of guys and you get a kill, you're able to quickly sprint out of there if you're outnumbered. But as I said, it's only used in these certain situations if you're very outnumbered, or maybe you're trying to push really fast with your team and you get bogged down trying to get a kill with someone. I wouldn't say Rush is all that effective, but then again, it is definitely one of the more useful ones when it comes to team play and going into these larger battles. Once again, with things like duels, Rush is almost useless, so I wouldn't really look into that if dueling is more your thing. But this next one is a little bit of a controversial one for me, because this once again is one I actually use. At one point it's pretty useful, and this is Tenacious. Now, when you're in a game and you're fighting someone, you might get hit quite a few times, and yes, you can heal yourselves with med packs and bandages and things like that, but also you have passive healing, which means if you stop sprinting, that means you will start healing. You can stand still, or you can just walk around without pressing shift, and you'll be able to heal up slowly over time. And Tenacious actually increases that health regeneration, the passive health regeneration, by 40%, which means that you're able to get back into the combat a bit faster. Now, while this is useful in most situations, I found a lot of the time it's actually more useful just to take a bandage instead, since yes, the bandage won't always heal you to full health, but most of the time it will, since you won't take all that much damage if you're still alive anyway. You'll most likely be on half health anyway, so the bandage will put you to full health there, and it's actually faster than having to wait for the passive health regeneration, which does take 5 to 6 seconds of standing around when the bandage can be done in 2 or 3 seconds. So I would say a bandage is more useful. They're both 1 point each, so it's up to you as a decision, but whether you want to go for the Tenacious perk or use a bandage instead is really up to you. But personally, I'm going to start taking a bandage into battles since you need to get that heal faster, so that's what I'm going to be doing. So you get passive health regeneration anyway, so the Tenacious just speeds it up, and the bandage, if you use that, you're going to be healing faster anyway. So I would definitely say the bandage over Tenacious, but it is still there anyway because it's fairly useful. Now, the 6th spot is an interesting one, and I think this is the one that's going to get the most people wondering about why I put it on here on the list at number 6, because yes, this is a very situational class perk, but I think it is so good for that class that it deserves to be a little bit further up the list than things like Smith and all that sort of stuff. And this is the Huntsman perk. This means any projectile will deal 200% more damage against archers, doubling the damage you do against other archers. Now, you may think at first that this is pretty useless, and yes, if you're playing as an infantryman just throwing things, this is probably not going to be something you want to be using. But if you yourself are playing as an archer, where your main target is other archers, because they're the weakest armored, they've got their heads exposed, and they're the ones doing the range damage to your guys, so you're going to be wanting to counter them with your own archers, meaning that if you have Huntsman as an archer yourself, dealing double the damage to another archer will be the difference between winning or losing that shootout. So I think for archers, it is incredibly useful. It's completely useless for pretty much any other class, and because it's so specific to archers, it's not quite that high up, but since it's so useful if you're an archer, and almost mandatory, I think, if you want to be winning those archer duels, this is what you want to be going for as a skirmish unit, the Huntsman perk. At the number 5 spot, we have Friendly. This is once again one I use, and one that I think a lot of people should be using in the game. In a team game, it means you take less damage from other teammates when they hit you, but also you deal 50% less damage when you're actually swinging and you accidentally hit a teammate, which is great for these big battles. Like I said, duels is not something you want to be using this for, but if you're in a frontline or a skirmish where you're fighting close with other teammates, the Friendly perk is something that definitely should be on your radar, as a lot of people complain of getting team kills or being team killed themselves, and yes, it can be an issue in these larger games, so having the Friendly perk where you take less damage from teammates and deal less damage from teammates is very useful, and especially at 1 perk point, it's extremely cheap and can be useful in these large scale battles. But this moves us on nicely to the 4 best perks. And now, of course, it is completely opinionated in which order these 4 perks are. Well, I would say the top 3 are probably the ones that can be interchanged. But at the number 4 spot, we have Fury. This means a stamina on kill can be increased 66%. So when you get a kill, you will get a massive boost in stamina, which I feel like is very, very useful, especially when you're fighting multiple enemies at once in these big games. A lot of the time you can run out of stamina, especially using a shield, having to block so many attacks coming in, and then eventually if you get that kill, you'll get your stamina almost 3/4 of the way back up to its original full point. But with Fury out of the way, as I said, the top 3 can be pretty much interchanged with each other. I would say that any of these can be the best in whatever your playstyle is, but any of these can be any of the other points in the top 3. So yeah, it completely depends on your playstyle. But without further ado, at the number 3 spot, we have Second Wind. This means you have a stamina gain upon hit of 30%. A bit like Fury, you get that stamina gain, but instead of getting it when you kill, you get it when you just hit them, and this is actually probably a little bit more effective than Fury. A heavily armed opponent will often take 3 hits if you have a rapier, which means if you're gaining 30% stamina each time, you're actually going to be gaining a lot more stamina than you would be if you were using Fury, and even if you're using one of the bigger weapons, this is still a useful perk to have. I would say this works best well with the loadouts, like I said, that are using the rapier sort of loadouts, those fast stealthy loadouts that were going in fast and quick, but need that stamina stamina boost in order to keep it up. And it works so well with the next one. This next perk and second wind work so well hand in hand that you can become, if used properly, almost unbeatable. And this is dodge. Dodge enables you to jump backwards, side to the side, and it means that you're able to get round the enemy, get round their swipes, and even just dodge out of the way of their stabs and thrusts. It's really effective against short range weapons and even long range weapons. If they sort of overestimate how long their weapon actually is, you're able to dodge out the way and get a quick stab in there. This, as I said, is very useful for rapier or one-handed sword type weapons, maybe even a small buckler or shield like that. Dodge and second wind together are some of the most powerful perk combinations, but of course it means you're going to have very light armor, since dodge takes, I think, 4 perk points, which is very expensive, so having light armor and a light weapon is going to be necessary in order to afford these two together. But if you get them together, you are very, very powerful on the battlefield, especially if used properly. Dodging to get around the enemy, and second wind in order to keep up that stamina, which is a great thing, especially in duels. In larger battles it might not be quite as useful, but in dueling, dodge and second wind are two of the best perks you can use. But what is number one? What would I say is the number one perk? Now, as I said, this can be interchanged with dodge and second wind, but I do think that Bloodlust is best for the generic player. Me personally, I wouldn't use Bloodlust because I don't really think I need it, and I don't think it's the best perk for me. But if we're talking about in general terms for most players in the game, Bloodlust giving you a 50% health increase upon a kill can be so useful in these big battles. When you're going against 1 against 2, 1 against 3, even 1 against 4, the more health you have, the more hits you're going to be able to take. So even if you're able to just take one guy down, that's a 50% health increase. You're able to become extremely powerful, especially if you can get those double swings, getting 2 or 3 people with one swing. My god, the health you're going to be increased there, going on to be able to stay into the battle rather than someone that's going to have to pull out the battle because they don't have the health. And yes, Bloodlust isn't necessarily the best perk for everyone, but I would say on general, especially for new players and especially for people that just like to get stuck in there, not necessarily using a lot of interesting detailed tactics and strategies, Bloodlust is something really that should be used for those brawler type guys. Speaking of brawlers, there is also a brawler class where it makes your fists do more damage, but I'm not putting that one at the top because I really feel like that's not going to help anyone. But that's been my top 10 list for the perks in Mordhau. What are your top 10, guys? Make sure you leave a comment down below. I expect that Bloodlust, dodge and second wind are all going to be at the top of most people's list, since I think it's pretty unanimous that these 3 are very powerful perks if used correctly. But thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to see more Mordhau videos. But until then, guys, I will see you in the next one.